The population of China in 1200, before the Mongol invasion, was around 123 million, whereas, by 1393 it declined to 65 million. According to another source, China's population in 1250 was 112 million, but by 1500 it was barely 84 million. This large reduction seems to be the result of the Mongol invasion, the famine, and the plague. As seen from Table of the World Population, both the lower estimate and the upper estimate from year 1200 to 1300 seem to suggest the population has not significantly increased during that time. This is the period during the Mongol invasion, when Genghis Khan initiated the conquest in 1206 and continued to expand the empire. In the year 1279, the Song dynasty collapsed at the hands of Kublai Khan, and the Mongol Empire occupied its greatest territory. As discussed before, the Black Death depopulated the world from 1340 to 1400. Overall, the world population from 1200 to 1400 decreased or remained stagnant. The phenomenon is attributed to the massacre performed by the Mongol army, the Great Famine, and the Black Death. After the Mongol invasion, a large region ranging from the Southeast Asia to the Eastern Europe was united under one political authority. The Eurasian unification by the Mongol Empire brought forth a historical exchange between Europe and Asia, the so-called Pax Mongolica. Under such administration of Mongol Empire, cultural exchange and collaboration in commerce began, which further brought stability of social, cultural, and economic life for the people under the reign. The Mongols utilized the skills and technologies from the conquered regions for their own advancement, and this eventually stimulated further exchange between the Eastern and Western cultures. Such exchanges were well facilitated by the Silk Road. However, the Silk Road also provided a channel to spread the plague to Europe. It was 1338 when the Black Death first broke out, and it was caused by military encounter with the Mongols. Let us review a report on the above-mentioned facts. Quote, from the mid-13th century, increased commercialization in Europe opened up silk routes through the steppe lands, and the trading posts set up to service this trade formed convenient stepping stones for infected fleas to break out of the area. The first known victims of plague were probably a community of Nestorian Christians at Issyk Kul, south of Lake Balkhash, whose cemetery explicitly records 3 plague victims in 1338-9, year in which there were unusually heavy mortalities. In 1343, it had reached the Black Sea port of Kaffa, Theodosia, in the Crimea. There, a Genoese colony was under siege from a Khan of the Golden Horde named Yanabeg, when his army was decimated by an outbreak of plague. Determined to make his enemies suffer the torments of his men, he ordered that bodies of plague victims be catapulted into the city. The Genoese hurriedly dumped these into the sea, but the plague spread anyway. Taking to their ships, the fleeing Genoese carried the plague far and wide. Unquote. This clearly indicates that the spread of the Black Death and the Mongols' conquest are powerfully related. There is also a report evidencing the relationship between the spread of the Black Death and the famine. Quote, Europe was then going through a cooling period known as the Little Ice Age, which reduced harvests and led to heavy rains that drowned out crops, in turn leading to famine and malnutrition. Economic downturns left large swaths of the population in poverty and squalor. The financial strains, the lack of public hygiene and sanitation, and an already weakened population made for ripe ground for a contagious and pathogenic bug like Y. pestis to flourish. Unquote. At some point in time during the Mongol invasion, much of Chinese populace was killed or relocated as refugees, giving rise to economic impoverishment primarily because the farming and trading became disrupted. Inevitably, the widespread famine must have been the natural aftermath. As revealed before, the Black Death has first started from China following the famine. But more interestingly, this plague has caused the Mongol Empire, or more specifically, Yuan dynasty into decline. Such facts indicate that the events of the Fourth Seal, the sword, famine, and pestilence, are all interrelated. God has mentioned all sword, famine, and pestilence within one single prophecy, the fourth seal. Could it be an indication that God intended us to know that these events are connected to one another? Genghis Khan's conquest would not have been possible by his own power alone, but was with the help of climate change. Recently, scientists have analyzed the growth rings of Siberia pine trees in the central Mongolia that date back nearly 2,000 years. The results showed that between 1180 and 1190, which was right before Genghis Khan established his hegemony, there was a severe drought. The drought caused the power struggle that aided Genghis Khan in his rise to power through the political turbulence. Moreover, from 1211 to 1225, when Genghis Khan was on the conquest, there was ample precipitation and good weather. Such conditions made unusual plant productivity possible, which was ideal for grazing horses, directly translating to more horsepower. The Independent magazine once testified, quote, "The tree rings show that the normally cold, arid steppes of Central Asia experienced their mildest, wettest weather in more than 1,000 years at the time when Genghis rose to power and established his enormous land empire with the help of his sons," unquote. Therefore, as affirmed by the historical records as well as the scriptures, God is meticulously in control of even the climate and weather to precisely fulfill what he has spoken. Jeremiah 10 verse 13, "When he uttereth his voice, there is a multitude of waters in the heavens, and he causeth the vapors to ascend from the ends of the earth. He mocketh lightnings with rain, and bringeth forth the wind out of his treasures."